Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our virtual town hall meeting today. My name is Cindy Dodds, and I am the Director of Professional Development at ACSI. In today's town hall, we will be discussing ways to help our students navigate the end of the school year. As I have been monitoring social media and other sources, I am seeing the grieving of our nation's seniors as they consider the loss of their final sports season, the loss of their prom or senior banquets, the loss of their senior missions trips, and even worse, the loss of the opportunity to walk across that stage and receive their diploma. Our students and their parents are experiencing deep sorrow and grief over their losses. How we respond matters. Perhaps there are students in other grades who are missing out on spring activities like the spring musical. How do we make modifications and adaptations in this environment that give these students and their families the memories they deserve? There are no experts in this field today, only practitioners just like you who are trying to figure it out. These town hall meetings provide a venue for you to hear what others are doing as they confront the current challenges, and they provide you the opportunity to get your questions answered among colleagues and friends. As we begin, we would love to know more about who is on our call today. Please take a moment to share your school information with us through the questions popping up on your screen at this time. Our speaker today is Cade Lambert, and on our panel we have Sam Stemple, Dr. Jerry Eshelman, Richard Hardy, and Debbie Schindler. After our panelists provide their insights, we will open the floor for your questions. If you have not already submitted questions via email, please begin submitting your questions now and throughout the meeting as those questions arise. You can use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. These questions are being monitored, and we will present them to our panel. Before we move on to the introduction of our speaker, I would like to introduce you to my co-host and ACSI Vice President of USA, Dr. David Balick. David?
Well, thank you, Cindy, and thank you again to you, to your PD team, doing a phenomenal job. Sarah Longcar as Learning and Development Manager, want to recognize her efforts as well in getting us ready for today's town hall. If I have my math correct, live participation for our COVID-19 town halls, as well as the other virtual events we've hosted with our president, Dr. Larry Taylor, and our legal legislative team, will have exceeded 3,500 attendees in total, over 3,500 live attendees. And that doesn't include the hundreds who have watched the recordings. Amazing. And praise the Lord for that. Well, welcome everyone. Like many of you, I have a few hobbies. Haven't had much time for them these days, right? Golf is one. I'm not a very good golfer, but I enjoy it, especially playing with my sons. Reading. Love to read about leadership, especially, and of course, living here in the deep South, in the state of Alabama, college football, very important hobby and roll tide to any Alabama fans out there. Perhaps my most unusual hobby, though, is collecting quotes. I really enjoy collecting quotes, and I know it's a bit of an odd hobby, but it's something that is enjoyable for me. And here's a good one. You probably heard it somewhere along the line, and it's attributed to Chuck Swindoll. He said this: life is 10% what happens to us, 90% how we respond to it. Life is 10% what happens to us, 90% how we respond to it. It's so true. If you're anything like me, you tend to make it more about the circumstance or the situation in which we find ourselves, what's happening to us, when in fact our response, our reaction is really the key to navigating the challenges of life. Case in point, Jerome was a brilliant scholar, but he spent the last year of his life living in a cave outside of Bethlehem, convinced the world was coming to an end. That was in AD 420. The Visigoths had sacked Rome. Jerome was total despair and shouted, "The world sinks into ruin." Then he retreated to his cave and died. What a terrible ending. When things felt out of control to him, he lost control. He hid out. He simply gave up. Augustine responded quite differently. He realized that God is in control of all things. And that realization gave Augustine confidence to stand strong, to love God, and to love his neighbor. He put his trust in God. It must be noted, however, that it was an active faith. Augustine orchestrated the last defense of Hippo, his city, as he lay dying and as the barbarians were at the gates. This brief tale of two ancient Christians can offer much instruction to us as we face uncertainty and upheaval in this COVID-19 moment. Amen? What a stark contrast in responses. Jerome goes and hides. Augustine engages and actively seeks to serve and to make a positive, meaningful impact, just like you have been doing in recent weeks. And we thank you for that. Life really is, in many ways, 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond. Even as we practice appropriate physical distancing, which in its own way is perhaps a way that we can love our neighbor, we need not despair. We need not give up, not declare that all is in ruins. And certainly, even though we may be tempted, we certainly shouldn't retreat to a cave, right? Instead, we can face this time of uncertainty with confidence and action, letting our light shine for the world to see. God's word tells us in Isaiah chapter 33, verses 5 and 6, "The Lord is exalted, for he dwells on high. He will fill Zion with justice and righteousness, and he will be the stability of your times." I love that. And he will be the stability of your times, abundance of salvation, wisdom, and knowledge. The fear of the Lord is Zion's treasure. God himself is our stability. When the unknowns in our lives prove turbulent and shaky, God has promised to be our sure foundation. And so we can face every twist and turn, every foe and failure, knowing that Jesus' kingdom is unshakable, that Christ really is greater than any virus. We can find hope and joy in whatever tumult this day brings, because Jesus Christ is the stability of our times today and every day. Let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you that you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, help us to let our light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify you, our Father in heaven. Oh God, we know that with you, we can overcome every storm, including the global impact COVID-19 is having on our world. Right now, Lord, right now, we're asking you to heal those who are sick, protect those who are not, give our leaders extra wisdom, Lord, as they navigate this pandemic and economic uncertainty. Strengthen your global church, calm our fears, fill us with your hope, your joy, your peace, as we continue to trust in you, and use this pandemic, Lord, to pave the way for spiritual renewal. We ask it all in the strong name of Jesus. Amen. Well, we're going to hear first from Cade Lambert today. Excited to have Cade here. He's the head of school at Des Moines Christian School in Iowa and has served for several years as a mentor in the ACSI Leadership U program. He's a respected school leader and is known across the country for his strong and forward-thinking leadership. Cade, thank you so much for joining us today, brother.
Yeah, thank you, David, for that kind introduction. Well, as Cindy mentioned in her opening, I'm not sure that anybody would consider themselves an expert in the times that they're in, but wanted to share some things and really start with the process that we have gone through in making decisions here at Des Moines Christian. When we really looked at the rest of the school year and the possibility of not being able to finish like we normally do or like we want, our first step was to really look at our end of year events and start to prioritize those. what are the ones that we wanted to put the most effort into, and what are the ones that we just wanted to or needed to let go of. And so for us, along with probably many of you, the top of our list was commencement for the class of 2020. Followed closely actually by our senior awards night, which is a pretty special time of closure and kind of commitment with our seniors and their immediate families and the faculty. And so we wanted to maintain that as much as possible. And then third, prom, which from a social standpoint and from a schooling standpoint is very important to our students. And so we wanted to maintain that as well. And we made the decision after our governor decided to close schools for the rest of the year to move those events into the month of August. So the first week in August, we're doing really a pretty intense weekend of commencement, senior awards night, and prom, and try to see how that goes. Now, those may need to look very, very different than what they typically do. And so we're just kind of keeping some of those plans fast and loose as far as what we're going to do with those. But we want to make sure that we provide something for our seniors in that way. Something else that has been a huge tradition here is a senior chapel. And it's really kind of a passing of the baton for our seniors, for them to be able to kind of leave the student body with some things that they've learned, some perspectives that they've gained, allows them to plan not only the worship, but also provide the messages for that. And so we're working on allowing the senior class to do a virtual chapel so that they can continue to carry on that tradition and impact the rest of the student body from that standpoint. And then a group that we don't want to forget about is our senior parents. And there was a time when we didn't really do a very good job with our senior parents, and we've really tried to up our game there in the last few years. And so recently we've been doing a senior parent breakfast at the end of the year where we just bless them. We provide them with not only food, but also a gift, so that for all of the years that they've been at Des Moines Christian School, they're able to leave with hopefully something from us that's meaningful to them, and that they can take that and hopefully carry great memories of not only their child's experience, but their experience here as well. And so we're going to carry on that tradition, not with a breakfast, but with an item drop at their homes. So we're going to take their gifts to them, leave them at their homes, and so that they still can carry that with them as they begin to leave the school here. And also to one of my favorite things is that we've asked some alumni parents to reach out to our current senior parent and just encourage them through notes, cards, maybe some wisdom, because this has been a hard, not only on our seniors, but also our senior parents. In fact, I heard a story from a parent here recently that when the governor made her announcement here in Iowa last week, that their son was disappointed, but his wife cried. And so in that, it just reminds me of the emotion that comes in these situations, and how we want to continue to try to nurture not only the class of 2020, but also the parents too. We're doing some other things like special things on social media, yard signs, some more transactional things like that, but really trying to connect with those families and those students right now and let them know how important they are to us and to our entire school community. I also wanted to talk just about some things that we are attempting to do with our current student families. And of course, with all of us, retention is a big deal right now. We want to make sure that the families that we have this year are the families that we have next year. And so a big part of that for us is our move up events. And so transitions from preschool to kindergarten, or transitions from elementary to middle school, or transitions to middle school to high school. Our department heads are working hard on still developing some virtual ways to connect with that next year administrator, to really encourage them and to get them excited about stepping up. We try to look at this experience here as something that builds on each other. And so we want that next step to be just even better. As much as you love elementary school, we want middle school to be the big time. And then, of course, culminating with the high school experience. And so just trying to create some energy with some of those step-up events and just making sure that, that students are excited about what's to come and parents as well. Like many of you, we've been working hard to leverage social media. And so asking our families to share their experiences, share pictures, give us things that are going well right now so that we can continue to build momentum going into the fall, that we can hopefully share the satisfaction of our families in distance learning to create just more energy and momentum for maybe families that are struggling a little bit right now, and so that they can see a different perspective and hopefully be encouraged by what's going on in other areas as well. And then, of course, as we all know, from an administrative standpoint, our faculty and staff are the heartbeat of our school in so many ways. And we want to make sure that they continue to be energized and excited about what they're doing right now. And so with Teacher Appreciation Week coming up, we have some yard signs coming that talk about how much we appreciate them and their dedication to our students and to our mission. We'll be dropping those off at their houses. We got all kinds of food plans and home movie nights and gift bags that we're working with our PTF, and the different departments are doing slightly different things just to encourage their faculty and staff right now. And one that I'm going to be involved in intimately is we have a Department Teacher of the Year award that we typically give at the end of the year. This year it was going to be at our gala, but because that became an online event and a virtual event, we're going to try to rethink the Teacher of the Year celebration, and that's going to be another door kind of experience where we're going to take the award, take the balloons and the card, kind of like a publisher clearinghouse, if you can imagine that, with some balloons and making the announcement to the teachers at their house. And again, just something that we can hopefully create some great moments, some great energy and excitement around, and to be able to share that with the rest of our community as well. And then last but not least, we really want to focus in on our prospective families as well and make sure that the end of the year is special for them as well. And so when we look back on 2008, I know there's a lot of attention given right now of trying to predict how this situation is going to impact enrollment for the fall. And as Des Moines Christians, we look back on 2008 and seeing where we were really impacted. A big way, or the most significant way that we were impacted, was through our kindergarten enrollment. And so we've already enrolled kindergartners for next year, and we're really focused on making sure that those kindergartners, and especially their parents, are not thinking about anything other than being at Des Moines Christian in the fall. And so we recently did another door drop where we dropped off t-shirts, kindergarten t-shirts, which we typically give out during the summer or as we go into August, but we wanted to get those t-shirts into their hands as quickly as possible so that they could get those on and see themselves wearing blue and white as they came into the next school year. And so we made those drops at those houses, and then we asked parents to have their kids put those on and send us pictures. And so we've had a social media campaign around our kindergartners wearing their class t-shirts. And so that was a lot of fun. We also just have been in contact with prospective families. Again, our primary marketing tool for increased enrollment is retention and internal marketing. And so we continue to use social media and those platforms to really try to talk about what we're doing, to try to create engagement and excitement and try to build on it for the fall. And so those are just some of the primary things that we're doing right now. In the PDF that I provided, I listed all of those things out. But I would really say at this point in time, sometimes we get into these modes, especially in a crisis situation, where there's a million good ideas. And frankly, we don't need a million ideas. We just need a couple good ones. And some of the ones that I listed may or may not be helpful to you. You may be way ahead of us in thinking about things that are far superior to that. but just know your community, be able to engage with them in a meaningful way, commit to a few things that you know that you can do really, really well. And I think some of those are more meaningful, those deeper connections than trying to do all the millions of ideas. If you're like me, my inbox, and I've got parents and staff saying, hey, you should do this or you should do that. And some of those ideas we've used, and some of those great ideas we've said thanks, but no thanks. And so I would just give you the permission to say, hey, there's things that are going to be great. And there's things that are going to be not helpful to you this time, but commit to those things that you think that you can do a great job of executing, and don't look back, and ask God to come alongside you and bless your students and families through those activities, and try to enjoy this end of the year as much as you possibly can.
Thank you, Kate, for sharing your own thoughts and your journey as you consider these important endings and milestones for students. David, I'm going to pass it back to you to introduce our panelists for today.
Thanks, Cindy. We have a number of questions coming in from the, 550 folks that are participating in our town hall today, and we're anxious to get to those questions. We want to get to as many of them as we can, but before we do, our panelists are going to introduce themselves and share their unique insights in light of the topic today. So let's begin with, all the way from Germany, Sam Stempel of Black Forest Academy. As you know, Europe has experienced the effects of the coronavirus before the US has, and so there is much to learn from our international friends. Sam, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Germany today.
Yeah, guten Abend, or I guess for most of you, guten Tag, as you begin your afternoon or go through your afternoon. My name is Sam Stempel. I serve as the Student Life Director here at Black Forest Academy. Served here for 18 years and love this place. Black Forest Academy is located in southern Germany and is a school primarily for international workers' children, or MKs as we would say. A boarding school, our high school boarding level, and then we do have a middle school that's our home students and our staff students that would be 5th through 8th grade. Just like a lot of you, we're dealing with the stuff that's going on March 27th. Germany closed all schools until further notice. And so at that moment, we went into crisis mode, as we have a lot of boarding students that we were trying to get home. And we got about half of our boarding students. We have about 107 boarding students in our high school program, and we got about half of them home to their families, but we have about 50 students that were not able to make it home. And so they have remained here in the dorms, and we have had to continue on in our programming while we're in a shutdown stay-at-home order. We have dorms that are full of kids. One of the things that's unique about this town hall is that we all are dealing with different regulations and different guidelines that we have to follow, and we're not any different in that. Just last week, Germany has begun to have a soft opening towards trying to restart life here. And so on May 4th, we will be allowed to have our juniors and seniors enter back into physical campus learning. But the rest of our school, middle school and high school, will have to continue our remote learning, which we have been doing since our shutdown. So when Germany shut down our school, we immediately developed, we call it a task force. We developed a group that would look specifically into what's it going to mean to bring closure for our seniors. What does that going to mean? What's that going to look like? And so the first time we met, we just went through every scenario that we could think of. If Germany allows us to do this, this is what we can do. If Germany allows us to do this, this is what we can do. And so we began to process what our scenarios are from this task force. We called it our SASI task force, our Save Our Senior Year task force. But then the one thing that we did that I think was most effective in all of this is we began to list out what are the significant events or traditions that help bring closure in the past for our students, for our seniors. What are the things that that were so significant in the life of our students to bring closure. And we began to talk about that. And what we recognized is it isn't always an event, though I think that we have to look at our events. Sometimes it's components within an event. So it's not necessarily for us, it wasn't necessarily our JSB, but it was the components that are within our JSB that were helpful to bring closure. And we began to identify those things. What are the very specific things that help our students have closure to the end of the year? Even in graduation, some of the ways that we do graduation, there's aspects to it that are so important for the life of our seniors. And then we also asked the question, what are events that need to happen that were important for the life of our underclassmen to be able to say goodbye to our seniors? And I think that's sometimes forgotten too, that we're so focused on our seniors, but we have to realize, and maybe in the life of our school where there's such an ending at graduation because people leave and are going home, how do we have closure for our underclassmen? And those are the things that we began to talk through. So whatever scenario Germany allows us to do in these next weeks and months, we want to identify the things that are so significant in the life of our seniors and then figure out, based on what we're allowed to do, these are the things we're going to try and have or develop, whether online or whether in physical presence. And we began to attack those things. And so I guess my encouragement to you, because it fits in every scenario, is as a school, think through what are the significant things that your school needs to have to bring closure for whatever, you know, even if it's kindergarten or preschool closure, if it's middle school closure, if it's high school closure, what are those things that are significant? Kind of like Kate said, and prioritize attacking those things to figure out how can we give our students those things that they need for closure. And so that's kind of where we are. We don't have anything set in stone yet. We have ideas based on what we think might happen. We have travel restrictions which affect us. So we could have a graduation maybe, but we couldn't get any parents here because of travel restrictions. And so there's some unique things for us that we have to deal with, but we are still trying to identify the things that bring closure and then attack those things. Thanks.
Sam, thank you so much, brother. Great start. Next, we have Dr. Jerry Eshelman, Superintendent of Resurrection Christian School in Loveland, Colorado. Jerry, welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Dr. Balick, and all of our 551 guests online here. It is a privilege to be with you guys today and give some ideas and insight as we stumble in the darkness as well through this whole time. Real quick, we are a preschool through 12th grade school, about 1,500 students. I just started here in July, came from a school in South Texas, and so as if your first year isn't hard enough at a new school, thought we'd add a little layer of difficulty to it as well with the pandemic. It's all good, it's fine. In our state situation, our governor just came out yesterday in the last 24, 48 hours with some clarity that indeed schools here are closed physically for the end of the year, which is helpful in one way because we've been planning and plotting so many different scenarios. So now we know for sure we'll be finishing remotely. So that's no problem, and we can make that happen. As has been discussed, we're looking ahead to all the issues that we normally do cover here in the fourth quarter, all the events and activities and so forth. And one of the things, and I think Cade referenced this briefly, and I appreciated his comments, one of the things that we saw very quickly was that we knew we could not do all things well. Our school, which I'm sure like yours, has had great comments and feedback on being able to pivot so quickly and go into a remote learning or online learning format. And so our street credit is high. People are loving their experience, and we keep getting great survey results back from our parents. So we want to keep that momentum going and do the right thing. We have conveyed this sort of metaphor, this idea of that we want to be an academic Noah's Ark in this time, and helping our families realize that they're part of a good program and that they may have children who are 3 to 6 months ahead of other schools, public schools, or their other school counterparts. But one of the things we saw when we realized there were so many things out there potentially to do, one of the things that I don't want to do is I don't want to answer questions that nobody is asking. So for us, one of the things that we began doing was a listening tour. And there were lots of informal ways in which we did that, just phone calls, conversations, talking to parents, getting feedback. Our administrative team, I think, does an excellent job of staying in tune with our families, our students, and our teachers, and just hearing from them, initial concerns, apprehensions, fears, worries, as well as any ideas or suggestions. We did a lot of those things informally, and then we also did a lot of things formally. And one of the best things I would say to everybody is the use of surveys, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, something like that, to find out what do your constituents want. We were very surprised in some situations by what we thought they wanted and what they actually said. You know, for example, just some survey results we got back the other day. We asked, you know, this is before we knew the governor was closing schools down. We asked, you know, if we can return, how many of you would like to return to school? Thinking, you know, parents want to get their kids out of school, out of the house and get them back to school and so forth, and stop having to be a surrogate educator with us. And I thought it was going to be 80-20 in favor of getting back to school, 70-30 maybe. It was like 58 to 42%, 58 in favor of coming back, 42% for staying at home. So almost 50-50. So my point is the surveys helped shape and guide and direct what we were doing. As you're no doubt seeing, one of the challenges, and I'm sure you are probably busier now than you've ever been, like I am. And part of the busyness is you are spending so much mental energy, number one, listing all the possible scenarios that are out there. And then number two, exploring each scenario and all the what ifs that could come with that scenario. What are some options? What are some ideas if scenario one happens? What about scenario two, scenario three? And it frankly it's exhausting. I think we pride ourselves as school leaders on being able to predict, anticipate, forecast the kinds of things that we need to do. And in this light, in this climate, that is a challenge to say the least. So surveys were quite helpful for us. So that shaped and guided and directed a lot of things that we were going to do and not do, and has changed some directions of some things. But other than that, what we've tried to do is take a hold of the spring events, specifically Q4, and look at how we can either utilize them, translate them into an online or electronic form or whatever. So we've used online methods. I've seen online art studios. We have an online art show that we did that we normally do physically, or there are going to be a series of like a photo montages. Other methods and techniques we've used are drive-bys, as I think has been mentioned already. We want to drive by and visit kids or drop things off or visit families or whatever, obviously, or deliver things to them. Social media has also been a huge boon for us. So really nothing amazing or profound there. I think we're all using some of the same channels of communication to be sure. Videos from myself, I think is also a key time for all of us to be communicating in the right ways, being honest, maybe even transparent, maybe even vulnerable, I should say, always transparent, but maybe even vulnerable as to, you know, we're just trying to think through this, parents, where we are, and letting them know this is where we are today. In 20 minutes, it may change, but this is where we are today. Getting to some specifics that we are working on. So obviously graduation and prom is a big deal. We are right now setting up the idea of doing a July 25th, that's a Saturday, doing July 25th graduation and prom all in one shot. So it would be graduation in the morning for the seniors, 8th grade graduation early afternoon, and then senior prom that night. Again, insert your asterisk here, again, assuming that we can do all of that at that time. We're even looking at different scenarios. Can we do it in our main auditorium, or do we have to do it maybe outdoors? They'll be more open to that. We're outdoor, open air kinds of things. So we're pursuing outdoor venues and an outdoor scenario as well to do that. But again, from our surveys, we asked, would you rather have a virtual graduation and do it in the time frame that is normal, or would you rather wait and do a physical graduation, but do it maybe later in the summer? Without a doubt, everybody wanted to do it physically, and they were willing to wait. I didn't know for sure. I didn't know people would be gone on vacation, where they would be at. all those kinds of things. And if it wouldn't matter at that point, because they're gone, they're all over the country or wherever they may be traveling, again, presupposing that one can travel. Another thing that we are looking at to another spring event that we are trying to translate is teacher appreciation. As you well know, our teachers are absolute rock stars. They are the warriors in the trenches right now having to do this. Many of them have their own children at home and then trying to teach all day long. So working with our foundation and some of our parents to work on a teacher appreciation. What we're doing right now, the latest idea is, and we did look at putting signs in their yards and different things, but then there were HOA issues and some lived in apartments and it just got messy. So what we are going to do is some sort of a deal where they come by the school and pick up a care package. They don't need to get out of their car. They just come by, roll down their window, and our team will hand them a care package. In that care package is going to be all kinds of goodies, treats, gift cards to restaurants, et cetera, all of that kind of thing. Maybe a hand sanitizer and maybe one roll of toilet paper. But anyway, so then beyond that, then what we're looking at is once they pull out, we want to have a tunnel of cars that they would drive through. Everybody would stay in their car. Maybe their van door open, maybe they're in the back of the bed of their truck or whatever, but just, you know, signs up, we love you teachers, thank you for everything you've done. Also, our property is right on the corner of two major thoroughfares, so we want to line the corner of our property with signs out front, banners out front. Resurrection Christian loves our teachers are rock stars, our teachers are number one, you know, all that kind of thing, and leave those out there for a week or two. So that our teachers know it, but also in one other small way, it raises the level of awareness of this in the community, that our teachers are working hard too and need to be shown some appreciation. One thing that we are working on right now is how do the kids return their materials? So as we probably much like you, gave our kids all their textbooks, in some cases gave them devices if they didn't have them. And so we do need to get those things back. So what's that look like? So real quick, short version here, in elementary, we're going to probably bag and tag those items. So it's going to be an exchange. They bring back their books and their devices, but also they've got to pick up their things out of their classroom, or for middle schoolers, high schoolers, out of their lockers. So we're setting up this process now, this sort of drive-in process where we'll have a tech drop-off. We'll have a place where elementary, for example, we're going to pre-bag their items for elementary, as you can probably guess. It's a little easier for the teachers to go into their desks, bag their items honestly in a garbage bag, put their name on a tag on that garbage bag, and then we'll have those all laid out there either by grade level, alphabetically. I don't know, we're working those details out. And then they'll drop off their tech, they'll get their bag, and then on the way out the door, they get their yearbook. In middle school, high school, a little bit differently. A lot of our kids share lockers. So it's impossible for our staff to go through and pick out whose items were what. So we're working on those details now. With some specifics, we're looking at having them come through a very specific door. They'll get their temperature taken. They'll be required to wear a mask or bring a mask with them when they come in. We might do alphabetically to kind of naturally, mathematically spread the kids out. So like A through H comes in from 8 to 10, and I through M, whatever, comes in 10 to noon. We'll also have some folks throughout the hallways as kind of hall monitors to kind of keep people moving so that we don't have a whole lot of loitering and hanging out and trying to be graceful and gracious about that. So that's another big thing for us right now that we're trying to figure out. But beyond that, we are just moving ahead with a potential summer academy as well, trying to figure out a way to make sure that our kids don't lose much in the way of instruction and keep them moving. But on and on the list could go. I don't want to monopolize the time, but there are a lot of details there, and we're just simply, I think we're in a good place. We've got a couple scenarios that we're narrowing it down to and should be good to go.
Phenomenal, Dr. Eshelman. Thank you so much for that. Up next, we have Debbie Schindler, head of school at Pacific Christian Academy in Federal Way, Washington. She's the co-author of the devotional book, Lord, I Need You, a devotional specifically designed for school leaders. Debbie, good to have you here with us today.
Thank you, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's good to be here too. Appreciate all the ideas that have been shared. Our situation is a little bit unique from what you've heard so far. We have a fairly small graduating class, and so we have a little bit more nimble ability with them, and we lease a fairly large amount of space from a mega church. So the possibility of us having somewhat of a live graduation, even in our sanctuary, is something we're thinking about, because our sanctuary can seat 2,000. And with our smaller graduating class, there would be plenty of room to do that. However, that may not be allowed. And so we also are looking at having our graduation outside. Hopefully it's not raining, as it often does here in the state of Washington. Our process has been to wait and pray. And we've just exercised huge patience as we've been watching what's happening in our state. Our governor has us right now under stay at home, but there's been some talk that perhaps in the middle of May, we may be able to loosen up those requirements. And although we don't know what that really means, we're going to wait and see if that might allow us to do a little bit more than we could currently do. Right now, we cannot have students in our buildings, but that might be lifted if our governor feels that that would be appropriate. Boeing did go back to work this week, so that's giving all of us hope that things might start moving again in our state. So we have met with our seniors and their parents, listened to them. We know that they would like to graduate on time, and it looks like we might be able to do that. So that's our number one scenario. If that's not possible, we will plan something else and move that date out a little bit, but we are hoping to graduate by the end of June, if that's at all possible. Our leadership team has been looking at our end of the year events. What can we do for each of those, which are the most important, and also trying to prioritize them. I do agree with our other speakers that listening to your parents, listening to your teachers and your kids is just so important, because we really want to meet their needs, their spiritual needs, their emotional needs, their social needs, all of that we're wanting to take into consideration. And so having a couple of scenarios, I think, is important. It demonstrates good leadership. And boy, we found out we are pretty nimble. We were online and distant learning within just a few days of the governor's announcement. So we're pretty sure we can do that again as we consider end of the year events. We also are planning some town halls with our parents in the middle of May. And one of the main questions we're going to be discussing with them is, what do you want the end of the year to look like? What is important to you? And that information will obviously affect our decisions. I want to share that I also have a handout for you, and on my handout is a recommendation that you look at a Facebook page that is available to educators. There is a certain place on that Facebook page where educators are sharing amazing ideas about graduations, ends of years, and I'm sure that you'll find some super thoughts there that you might take into consideration. As far as events for our younger students, we're considering having families meeting in groups, family groups. We know that there's a couple of other Christian schools in our area that are doing that. And then even having the graduation ceremony happen from those family tables. So for example, if it's a kindergarten graduation, the families are at their tables, their kindergartner is with them, there's appropriate spacing, and they might sing a few chapel songs or their favorite songs together. There might be a recitation of verses. There might be a circle of the graduates around the parents, around the tables for some special finale, and then the graduates going to someone to receive their diploma, or possibly someone coming to the table to give the diploma. So again, being creative and nimble, I think, and waiting in prayer is what we need to be doing at this time. And I see that we are running out of time, so I want to pass the baton to our next speaker.
Thank you, Debbie. Excellent. Well, our next speaker is a good friend and regional council member in the Southeast, Richard Hardy. Richard's head of school at Calvary Day School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Richard, great to have you with us today.
Greetings from everyone. It's great to be with you through this unique format today. And I think due to the sake of time, I'll just focus my comments on graduation. And we followed a lot of the same procedures that our other panelists have shared about today as far as connecting with families and students and staying connected with them to receive their input. First of all, here in the state of North Carolina, we are under a stay-at-home order through April 30, and the public schools are closed through May 15. And now we as a private independent school do not have to do exactly what the public schools do, but we certainly use what they have decided as a guide to help us in the decision-making process. We are expecting our governor tomorrow to make an announcement about an extended stay-at-home order, and probably the public schools are going to be closed through the balance of the year. So that will impact us. While most of the independent schools across the state have been hoping to get back in for at least a couple of weeks or so before the end of the school year, we all are realizing that's very unlikely at this juncture. So we're focusing our attention on finishing in a distance learning or online learning format. So that's what's happening here in our state. As far as graduation specifically for us, we're considering 3 options at this point in time. Number one is to have an on-campus, really normal graduation ceremony, just probably at a later date. Our original date for graduation is May 22nd, which is not far away. And but we realize that's highly unlikely, and therefore potentially an on-campus graduation in late June or in late July. Of course, that service would be live streamed as it usually is, and that would enable our international students who have had to return home or others that might be out of town and unable to participate to still be a part of that graduation service. So that's option one. Option two is kind of what we are calling a hybrid option. And this is where we would have some live components and pre-recorded components combined on the original graduation date of May 22nd. Now, I will say option 2 and option 3 that I'll share are primarily being considered because of this desire for closure. Obviously, this has been a tremendously difficult season for everyone in our schools, especially our seniors. And there's some thought to and some insight from the parents that closing this senior year at the normal time would be most helpful to them, so they can then begin to focus on next steps as it relates to college and so forth. So back to the hybrid model, we're considering the possibility of having some live components, which will be, of course, our address, our commencement address, thoughts from the principal, head of school, and so forth. And that would be combined with some pre-recorded components. Specifically, one that I will point out is seniors being on campus by themselves, just with their immediate family, to actually walk the stage. And this would happen in probably a 2-week period lead up time to May 22nd. Seniors and their parents, siblings would come in at a designated time where they would be the only ones participating. This would be recorded. They would have their name called. They would walk the stage, receive their diploma, pictures taken, hear some kind words, of course, shared about them. It would be a very personal process for them to be able to experience. And then that family would leave, and then a short time later, the next family would come through. All of that would be pre-recorded and then combined with the live components as part of the graduation ceremony on May 22nd at 7 o'clock, which is our predetermined graduation time. Of course, student speeches would be recorded ahead of time, and so there would be pretty much all of the components, even music, that would be recorded in proper social distancing formats to be able to include that as part of the the collected hybrid service on May 22nd. The third option is just simply doing everything pre-recorded and still using some of the information I just shared with you, but even the commencement address, comments from school leaders, all of that would be pre-recorded and again presented at the same time, May 22nd at 7 p.m. So those are the things that we're thinking about right now. And those could change. All of those could change in short order. And but that's where we are at this point in time, and I'm glad to share those ideas with you.
Thank you so much, Richard, for sharing those ideas, especially the hybrid and the virtual model that some of us are grappling with. Thank you to every one of the panelists for your wonderful insights. We want to invite all of our panelists back so we can get to our questions. In the meantime, several folks are asking for Jerry's survey questions. So if you're willing to share those, Jerry, we'll be happy to provide those in a PDF format with the recording link for those who are requesting it.
You bet, happy to do so.
Okay, so our first question. Does anyone have any ideas about how to handle kindergarten or preschool graduation specifically? Are you planning something virtual, a drive-through? Any ideas out there about those little kiddos? Cade had his hand up. In the meantime, if Cade wants to answer while we get Debbie back, go ahead, Cade.
Yeah, so we actually rescheduled preschool graduation for the summer. Much the same philosophy as senior commencement and just trying to celebrate that moment as well. Again, we may have to pivot on that and do something virtual, but that's our plan at this time.
Anyone else? Debbie?
We're hoping that whether it's inside, which seems a little likely, but maybe outside, we can have our kindergarten families come gather around a table. Maybe it would even be as informal as a picnic table, or maybe it would be linens and flowers, who knows. But gather as families with the graduate with them, and then have a ceremony that's outside. And we would bring all of our equipment, our audio and all of that out and do it out in God's creation.
That sounds like fun. David, back to you.
Well, lots of questions around graduation, that's for sure. So any other additional thoughts you have, whether virtual or holding them in person? I know someone had asked, you know, they have 13 eighth graders and they're wondering if they follow social and physical distancing guidelines for their students and families, whether it's reasonable, you know, to have that graduation ceremony with no reception planned. Anybody want to comment real quick on that? And then I've got another question for you. Any additional thoughts? Obviously, graduation's a big deal, right?
Yeah, what I would recommend strongly is the way we've all probably seen this working out is your local county board of health is driving a lot of it. Your governor, no doubt, is saying some things, but is allowing counties to also guide things. So what we're doing is we're pitching to the county a handful of our ideas. You may have seen the Air Force Academy graduation recently, that sort of 6x6 grid. We're toying with that as well if we do an indoor graduation and even if we do our outdoor graduation. But I would highly recommend contacting your county board of health and pitching your ideas to them to get their sign off. That is not a group you want to cross and get on the nightly news.
That's a good word, Dr. Eshelman. Thank you. We need to be mindful of those guidelines. Absolutely. Well, here's another question that came in regarding fourth quarter grades and finals at the secondary and elementary level. What recommendations do you have, if any, for fourth quarter grade and finals at the secondary and elementary level? Anybody want to take that question on? Go ahead, Cade.
So we have made finals optional in secondary, and so those are now just if students want another opportunity to prove or demonstrate learning, then the finals can do nothing but help them, but they are optional. And so we've taken that approach, but we are still giving grades. We want we're going to try to do the best that we can with that, and and so that we don't have really wonky GPAs through especially high school kids' career.
Debbie, I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're still doing grades as well. We are struggling, I think, as all of us are, with the assessment part of it. So right now we have teachers who are working with different methods, everything from having the parents pick up exams and tests in envelopes signed and sealed, and then they sign a statement that they observed it and it was done correctly. We're trying to look at different venues. As far as the end of the year finals, we haven't made a decision yet. We're going to wait and see how well we do along the way and then determine how much integrity and authenticity we can do finals with. And so we're in a wait mode for that.
Richard, go ahead, brother.
We have canceled finals for the year, and as it relates to grading, we are continuing to give grades through the balance of the school year. And really kind of our general counsel to our teachers has been to, when necessary, err on the side of the student. And whether it's with current assignments or even end of the year grades, none of us want our students to have to suffer due to this unique circumstance. And so it certainly is a balancing act, but that's kind of a general principle that we have overarching regarding grading.
Love that. Err on the side of the student. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. We are about out of time. I can't believe how our time has flown by. As we close out the town hall portion of our meeting, we encourage you to continue conversations on the ACSI community group thread dedicated to this discussion. We've seen some great questions and comments and input on the chat already. You can find a link to that discussion on our coronavirus homepage at acsi.org. You'll also find the link to today's recording along with handouts from our panelists, and hopefully we'll have Jerry's PDF in there as well. We have been looking for ways to bless our schools during this period, and one way we hope to do that is by offering a free subscription to ACSI Connexus Premium from now until June 15th for our member schools. Premium hosts over 500 teacher development courses on 40 topic-based channels for teachers' individualized learning. You'll find the link to register on acsi.org. And we've already had over 2,000 registrations for Connexus Premium. I sincerely hope you will join us for our town hall on Friday. The title is Innovate, the Changing Landscape of Christian Education, featuring Dr. Lynn Swanner. As we look into the next school year, we will explore the long-term impact of this pandemic on the education sector and think through how we can uncover new opportunities for missional outreach. Please check out the coronavirus webpage for ongoing updates regarding these opportunities. You'll see a new series emerging for next week, one for early education and one especially designed for parents. With this parent town hall on Thursday, April 30th, we are going to encourage you to create a Facebook watch party and engage with your parents on a personal level that way. Stay tuned. David?
Thank you, Cindy. We would now like to invite everyone to join a regional chat room. We are also hosting an international and early education chat room as well. These chat rooms are going to allow you to have more discussion together with your colleagues and the opportunity to talk with them about how they're handling this very important issue. These Zoom meetings are hosted by your ACSI directors, and we are providing the links in the chat panel at this time. Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Cade, all of our panelists. We hope this time was an encouragement and a blessing to you. Please consider joining our Monday Connection Time with ACSI President Dr. Larry Taylor for a short devotion, and ACSI update and Q&A time with our legal legislative folks on Mondays as well. During this hour, Our legal legislative team is live with updates, and they will take your questions as well. You can register for all of these virtual events on the coronavirus webpage. All right, let's head to the chat rooms now, and thank you again for joining us.